Italian front, Vatican City, 1915. In the moonlit shadows of Monte Pio, 13 soldiers were found with their throats torn open, hearts devoured, and flayed skin arranged in perfect crucifixes that glowed with unholy light. I am the War Maestro, and tonight I reveal how the Vatican's darkest ritual birthed a monster that fed on the faithful it was created to protect. May 23rd, 1915. The Great War had been ravaging Europe for nearly a year when Italy officially declared war on Austria-Hungary. Along the rugged Alpine border, Italian and Austrian troops now faced each other across rocky peaks once traveled only by shepherds and monks. The Vatican, though claiming neutrality, was thrust into the conflict by geography alone. Italy's war was now at the Church's doorstep. As Pope Benedict XV publicly called for peace, a darker concern haunted the Holy See. Father Tommaso della Torre, once a decorated military chaplain in the African colonial wars, knelt before the Pope's ornate desk. His hands trembled not from reverence, but from the photographs he had just examined, images smuggled from the front lines at Trentino. The 14th Alpine Regiment found them at dawn, Your Holiness, Father Tommaso said, his voice hardened by years of battlefield confessions. 13 soldiers arranged in a perfect circle, throats torn out, hearts missing. Their blood-painted symbols no modern soldier would recognize, but I did. Ancient Latin, words from forbidden rites. Pope Benedict XV, gaunt and sickly in his white cassock, pushed aside reports of German gas attacks and casualty figures from Gallipoli. His eyes revealed a terror no diplomatic crisis had ever evoked. You were chosen because your faith already died in Africa, Father, the Pope whispered, unlocking a drawer with a key he wore around his neck. What you are about to learn would destroy a true believer. The Pope removed a weathered leather portfolio sealed with wax bearing no official Vatican insignia. Inside lay a manuscript dating to the 13th century, its illustrations showing robed monks transforming into beasts with human faces. The Gospel of the Beast, the Pope explained. During the Albigensian Crusade, the Church tried to create divine warriors, holy men transformed into weapons against heretics. Only one ritual succeeded. Father Tommaso felt his throat constrict. This violates everything I ever preached. Last week, Italian artillery struck an unmarked Templar crypt in the Dolomites. The Pope continued, ignoring him. One sarcophagus was empty. Since then, both Austrian and Italian patrols vanish nightly. What we created centuries ago now hunts in war's chaos. The Pope pressed military orders into Tommaso's hand. Tomorrow you join Major Sofia Valente at the front. Find this thing. Contain it. Remember, it bears the Church's sin. And if I fail? Tommaso asked, already knowing the answer. Then God will judge us all for the monster we made in his name. The military transport juddered across the rutted mountain roads toward Monte Pio. Father Tommaso sat across from Major Sofia Valente, studying her as she reviewed intelligence reports. Unlike most women in 1915 Italy, she wore her authority without apology, the crisp uniform of Italian military intelligence, bearing decorations from the Eritrean campaign and the Italo-Turkish War. A thin scar traced her jawline, disappearing beneath her collar. I requested a different escort, Tommaso said bluntly. Someone without our history. Valente looked up, her dark eyes hard as obsidian. The Vatican doesn't command the Italian army, Father. Besides, who better to assist you than someone who's already seen what men become in war? The bitter reminder hung between them. 4 years earlier in North Africa, they had witnessed atrocities that drove Tommaso to question his faith, and Valente to embrace the cold precision of military intelligence. Tell me why the Vatican really sends an exorcist to investigate what my superiors classify as Austrian sabotage, she said, tapping classified photographs of dismembered bodies. 6 patrols vanished last week. The remains we recovered were, she hesitated, unusual for a woman who had catalogued battlefield horrors professionally. Even veterans of Libya couldn't stomach the scene. Tommaso stared at the passing landscape, jagged peaks cutting into a sky the color of bruised flesh. The church has interests beyond the spiritual, Major. Where military men see enemies, we sometimes recognize older adversaries. You mean supernatural? Her tone was flat, skeptical, yet not entirely dismissive. Like the stories the Eritrean guides told around campfires, the ones you once claimed were superstitions unworthy of educated Europeans. I've learned humility since Africa, Tommaso replied quietly. The transport rounded a bend, revealing Monte Pio in the valley below. Once a picturesque alpine village, it now stood transformed by war. Sandbags reinforced stone buildings, while soldiers moved through streets like automata, their eyes scanning the surrounding forests with barely concealed dread. Most striking was the village church, its windows boarded shut, its doors secured with heavy chains and military padlocks. Strange precaution for the faithful, Tommaso noted. 3 days ago, the village priest locked himself inside. When soldiers finally broke down the door, they found him hanging from the bell rope, his journal ... She withdrew a leather-bound book from her satchel, handing it to Tommaso. His final entry mentioned a gray visitor who spoke with the voice of centuries and left footprints that burned through the stone floor. As they descended into the village, locals made furtive signs at their approach. Not the sign of the cross, but something older, a warding gesture Tommaso recognized from pagan traditions predating Christianity in the Alps. In the military command post established in the village hall, Captain Bianchi unrolled maps spread across a requisitioned altar. Red circles marked positions across the mountainside. Each circle indicates where men disappeared, he explained, voice tight with exhaustion. Always at twilight, always alone. And this pattern? Tommaso traced the connections between circles. The captain shrugged. Random. We assumed. It's not random, Valenti said suddenly, her analytical mind seeing what the others missed. It's a perfect match for the deployment pattern of the 14th Alpine Regiment during the initial offensive. But Tommaso recognized something else entirely. An ancient sigil used during the Inquisition to summon divine judgment. In a field hospital tent, they interviewed a soldier with bandages covering his left arm. When unwrapped, the wound beneath defied medical explanation, a bite mark that refused to heal, the flesh around it darkening with each passing hour, veins visibly blackening beneath the skin. He found me on patrol, the soldier whispered, eyes wide with remembered terror. A monk with no face beneath his hood. I heard him chanting before he... The soldier's breathing quickened. He knew things. My sins. The village we burned in the first week of fighting. The prisoners we... His voice faltered. Valenti gripped Tommaso's arm with unexpected force. Just like Eritrea, she whispered. It knows what they did. The soldier suddenly stiffened, his eyes rolling back. When he spoke again, his voice changed entirely, reciting perfect ecclesiastical Latin. Ego sum instrumentum irae Dei. I am the instrument of God's wrath. Valente's hand moved instinctively to her sidearm. Still think this is superstition, Father? That night, as artillery fire illuminated distant peaks like lightning, Tommaso spread the ancient manuscript across a wooden table in the abandoned rectory. Major Valenti stood at his shoulder, her skepticism gradually yielding to grim fascination. According to these texts, Tommaso explained, tracing faded illustrations with his fingertip, in 1209, during the siege of Béziers, a Templar chaplain named Brother Matthias volunteered for a sacred ritual. The church needed weapons against the Cathar heretics that bullets and blades could not provide. He turned a page revealing diagrams of human anatomy intertwined with religious symbols. They believed they could channel divine wrath into human flesh, creating a holy predator who could sense the guilt of heretics. "And did it work?" Valente asked, voice tight with controlled disbelief. "Too well." Brother Matthias transformed, but remained conscious within the beast. The transformation drove him mad. He began hunting not just heretics, but priests who harbored secret sins. Tommaso's voice dropped. The church declared him anathema, sealed him in a crypt marked with holy symbols, and struck all records of his existence. Until our artillery broke open his prison, Valente whispered. The wounded soldier they had interviewed was brought to the rectory, now feverish and restrained. Father Tommaso prepared elements for an exorcism, though doubt clouded his movements. "This will fail," the soldier said suddenly in perfect Vatican Latin. "I taste your disbelief, priest without faith." Tommaso recoiled. "Who speaks?" "I wore the cross before I wore these teeth," the soldier replied, his voice unnaturally deep. "I hunted the impure before I hunted men." "Brother Matthias," Tommaso said. A smile twisted the soldier's face. "That name died with my humanity. I am what your church created, judgment made flesh." Tommaso pressed a crucifix to the soldier's forehead. The man merely laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. "Your ritual symbols mean nothing. I have tasted the sins of men in this war. Atrocities committed in trenches, villages burnt with families inside, poison gas that melts lungs while chaplains offer empty prayers." The soldier's eyes fixed on Tommaso. "I smell the deaths on your conscience from Africa, priest, the confessions you heard but did nothing to prevent." Tommaso staggered back. How could it know? "Each night I hunt," the soldier continued, "and with each kill, I remember more of what I was. Soon I will remember everything, and then I will visit Rome itself." His body convulsed violently, then went limp. When his eyes opened again, they held only human terror. "Father," he gasped, "he's coming tonight. He wants you." A dense mountain fog descended as twilight approached, bringing with it a silence that pressed against the eardrums like physical pressure. Italian soldiers huddled in defensive positions around Monte Pio, nervously checking ammunition and crossing themselves with trembling fingers. The air carried an unnatural chill that penetrated uniforms designed for alpine warfare, leaving men shivering not from cold, but from primal dread. Tommaso and Major Valente stood at the village perimeter, where the military had erected spotlights and machine gun nests. The smell of gun oil, sweat, and fear created a miasma almost thick enough to taste. "Your Vatican superiors sent this by field telegraph," Valente said, handing Tommaso a sealed envelope. Inside was a simple message: "Do not kill it. It is one of us." "One of us," Tommaso murmured. "After 7 centuries." The village bells suddenly rang out, 3 sharp peals, before falling silent. The sound hung in the air unnaturally long, each vibration seeming to penetrate bone and tissue. "No one is in the church," a sergeant whispered, his rifle trembling. "We sealed it ourselves." Fog thickened between the trees as darkness fell, not billowing like natural mist, but crawling like something sentient. The spotlights cut through it in useless shafts, creating more shadows than illumination. From somewhere in the forest came a sound no training had prepared the soldiers for, a low chanting in ancient Latin, interspersed with wet, guttural growls that resonated at a frequency that made teeth ache and inner ears throb. "Hold positions," Valente ordered, though her own hand hovered near her sidearm, knuckles white with tension. The first scream came from the eastern perimeter. Not a cry of warning or pain, but a sustained wail that ended in a liquid gurgle. By the time they reached the position, they found only arterial spray across empty sandbags, still warm enough to steam in the cold air. A trail of viscous fluid led into the mist, not blood, but something clearer, like lymph or cerebrospinal fluid. The second attack hit the western flank. 3 men vanished in seconds. One had time to fire his rifle. The muzzle flash briefly illuminated a ghastly silhouette moving at impossible speed. All that remained were drag marks in the mud and a scattered rosary, its beads gleaming wet with something that smelled of incense and decay. "It's testing our defenses," Tommaso realized, recognizing military strategy in the creature's movements. Like a battlefield tactician. "It was a Templar," Valente whispered. "They were warrior monks before they were bankers." A soldier near them suddenly stiffened, his eyes widening as he pointed toward the tree line. "Madre di Dio." The spotlight swung, illuminating a figure at the forest edge. What they saw defied rational explanation. It stood upright like a man, but moved with predatory grace, joints bending in directions human anatomy shouldn't permit. Tattered robes clung to its emaciated form, not the robes of a modern monk, but ancient vestments, partially merged with its gray, desiccated skin, as if cloth and flesh had fused over centuries. Most disturbing was its face, a horrific amalgamation of human and bestial features. Its jaw had elongated, simultaneously too human to be animal, and too animal to be human. Where eyes should have been, milky orbs without pupils reflected the spotlight with an unholy glow. A crown of bony protrusions erupted from its skull, in a mockery of Christ's crown of thorns, each spike weeping fresh blood that ran down its face like stigmatic tears. The smell hit them next. Not the expected stench of decay, but the cloying sweetness of church incense mingled with the metallic tang of blood and something older, like ancient parchment and sanctified oil. The creature turned directly toward the light, unblinking, its jaw opened wider than humanly possible, revealing rows of needle-like teeth, arranged not randomly like an animal's, but in perfect geometric patterns, reminiscent of cathedral windows. From its throat came not a roar, but perfectly articulated Latin. "Peccata vestra gustabo." "I will taste your sins." In a blur of movement impossible for its gaunt frame, it seized the nearest soldier by the throat and dragged him screaming into darkness. The man's flailing legs vanished last, his boots leaving parallel furrows in the earth. The machine guns opened fire, cutting swathes through empty fog. Each tracer round briefly illuminated fragments of the creature's anatomy. A clawed hand here, the curve of a skull-like face there, creating a strobe effect tableau of horror. "Stop firing," Tommaso shouted. "You'll hit your own men." As if in terrible answer to his command, the forest fell silent. Then something arced through the air, landing with a wet thud at Tommaso's feet. A human heart, still quivering with residual electrical impulses, surrounded by a perfect circle of rosary beads, arranged with mathematical precision. The heart continued to convulse in the mud, each contraction pushing out droplets of blood that formed tiny Aramaic letters before sinking into the soil. "It's not just killing," Valente whispered, her professional demeanor cracking. "It's performing communion." A disembodied voice floated from every direction at once, speaking in Italian, but with the cadence of ancient Latin. "You brought men to hunt me, priest. Now I hunt them. Each death is a confession, each heart a sacrifice. Tommaso felt something warm and liquid drip onto his shoulder from above. He looked up slowly, already knowing what horror awaited. Suspended in the branches above them hung the remains of the missing soldiers, their bodies contorted into the shapes of letters in an ancient alphabet Tommaso recognized from forbidden texts, a message meant for him alone. Dawn revealed the night's carnage, 7 soldiers missing, blood trails leading into the forest, and strange symbols carved into tree trunks along the perimeter. Military command was in disarray. Some officers argued for artillery strikes on the surrounding forest. Others advocated immediate withdrawal. Major Valente found Father Tommaso in the village church, now reopened. He knelt before the altar, not in prayer, but in contemplation of the ancient manuscript spread before him, and a new document that had arrived via military courier at first light. The telegram from Rome wasn't the first communication about this entity, was it? Valente asked, studying Tommaso's troubled expression. No. He handed her the new document, a confidential dossier bearing the seal of Cardinal Pietro Gaspari, Vatican Secretary of State. The Church has been monitoring this situation since before Italy entered the war. Valente scanned the document, her training in military intelligence allowing her to read between carefully worded lines. They knew the Austrian artillery might disturb the crypt, she realized. They've been waiting for this. The Church's relationship with Brother Matthias has evolved over the centuries, Tommaso explained, turning pages in the manuscript. I've spent the morning translating sections previously sealed with wax. He pointed to Latin text and crude illustrations. In 1265, 50 years after his entombment, the Church first attempted to destroy him, with blade, with fire, with poison. Nothing worked. Everything dies, Father. Not everything. The Inquisition hunted him across Europe for decades. Their records describe Matthias as neither living nor dead, but preserved by divine purpose. Tommaso turned to later pages. Then in 1307, when King Philip IV moved against the Templars, the Church's approach changed dramatically. The suppression of the Templars, Valente noted, her historical knowledge precise. The knights were arrested, tortured, executed, and suddenly the Vatican's hunter became its protector, Tommaso said. These accounts describe how a special papal delegation captured Brother Matthias and, instead of attempting to destroy him, built a chapel around his sealed crypt in the Dolomites. They imprisoned him again. More than that, Tommaso's voice dropped. They venerated him, like a saint or holy relic. For nearly 2 centuries, pilgrims brought offerings. Prayers were whispered to the divine beast. Official church documents from the period refer to him as God's hidden sword. A weapon, Valente said, understanding dawning. They kept him as a weapon, until the Protestant Reformation made such practices untenable. In 1521, Pope Leo X declared the cult heretical and buried all records. Tommaso closed the manuscript with unsteady hands. But they never forgot what they had. And now, with Italy at war. The Church officially supports peace, Tommaso reminded her, but Vatican politics are complex. Pope Benedict XV has been rebuffed in his peace initiatives. Austria still holds territories Italy considers rightfully hers, and some in the Curia see Germany's Protestant influence as the greater threat. A soldier interrupted them, pale with terror. Father Major, we found something. In a clearing half a mile from the village stood an ancient stone altar that predated the war by centuries. Fresh blood stained its surface. Arranged around it in a perfect circle were military identification tags from Austrian and Italian soldiers alike. It's building a congregation, Tommaso whispered. As they examined the site, a motorcycle courier arrived with an urgent sealed message. The delivery bore not just the Vatican's seal, but the personal signet of Cardinal Gaspari himself. Tommaso read it, his hands trembling visibly. "What does it say?" Valente demanded. "It confirms everything," Tommaso replied. "This isn't just a containment mission. The Cardinal Secretary writes that certain elements within the Curia believe Brother Matthias might be, his words, redirected toward Austrian forces. "They want to use him," Valente said, disgust evident, "like a specialized weapon." "The letter references a ritual from the Templar archives," Tommaso continued, "a method they once used to guide his hunt. I'm ordered to attempt communication with the entity and," he hesitated, "offer it absolution in exchange for service." Absolution? For what? For everything. 7 centuries of killing, in exchange for killing more. Tommaso folded the letter precisely, his decision visibly forming. "They've also sent the names of specific Austrian commanders they wish targeted." "That's not just spiritual warfare," Valente noted. "That's assassination, a direct violation of the rules of war." "And a perversion of everything sacred," Tommaso added. "The Church made this creature, abandoned it, and now seeks to use it again without addressing its suffering." He pocketed the order, face hardening with resolve. "We have until twilight to prepare, not for the communion they demand, but for something else entirely. And if your alternative fails..." Tommaso's eyes met hers, the doubt that had plagued him since Africa replaced by newfound conviction. "Then we burn every record of Brother Matthias and pray God forgives what the Church has done in his name." Valente checked her service pistol. "I'll arrange for our extraction. The military expects us to follow orders, but I know mountain routes the army doesn't patrol." "You would risk court-martial?" Tommaso asked. "You would risk excommunication," she countered. "Besides, I've seen enough men used as weapons in Africa. I won't be party to creating another." As twilight approached, Father Tommaso prepared himself in the church vestry. He had dismissed the altar boys and sent the remaining villagers to shelter in the military command post. Only Major Valente remained, checking her sidearm before reluctantly setting it aside. "The soldiers will maintain a perimeter," she said, "but will not engage unless I signal." "It won't matter," Tommaso replied. "No perimeter will hold against what's coming." He opened a sealed packet sent from Rome, extracting a brittle parchment document bearing the seal of Pope Innocent III, dating back to 1213. Tommaso's face drained of color as he translated the ancient text. "This is why the Vatican wants communication, not destruction," he whispered. "According to this account, Brother Matthias wasn't just a weapon against heretics. He was a miracle, the first successful union of divine wrath with human flesh. The Church considered him proof of God's favor." "Until he turned on them," Valente noted. "No," Tommaso corrected, his voice breaking. "The document states he remained loyal, killing only those the Inquisition marked. But as centuries passed, the Church's priorities changed. They became ashamed of what they had created, of what it revealed about their methods. They buried him alive and rewrote their histories." The church bells began to toll, though no hand pulled their ropes. "He's coming," Tommaso said. Valente moved toward the door. "I should check the perimeter." "Sophia," Tommaso said, using her first name for the first time, "if I fail, burn everything, the manuscript, these orders, all record that the Church created this abomination." Before she could respond, the church doors swung open with a thunderous crack. The creature stood silhouetted against the dying light, more man than wolf now, but still horribly transformed. Its monastic robes hung in tatters around a body twisted by centuries of rage. The crown of thorns had fused with its skull, blood eternally fresh at each puncture point. Fratrum Tomam, it spoke, voice scraping like metal on stone. Brother Thomas. I am not your brother, Tommaso replied. We serve the same master, the creature rasped, moving with unnatural grace down the center aisle. I taste your doubt, your shame, your sins in Africa, the villages you blessed before the soldiers burned them, the confessions you heard from men who raped and murdered, whom you then absolved. Tommaso felt Valente's eyes on him but couldn't meet her gaze. I hunt the guilty, the creature continued, as I was made to do. The church abandoned me, but not my purpose. From his vestments, Tommaso withdrew the Pope's letter. Your creators have sent me to offer communion. The creature laughed, a sound like breaking glass. After 7 centuries? I have tasted the sins of this war. The church does not seek reconciliation. It seeks to use me again. It drew closer, extending a clawed hand. Show me, it demanded. Tommaso surrendered the letter. The creature read it, then turned its milky eyes toward the ceiling. The same lies, it whispered. The same corruption. Nothing changes. The creature tore the papal letter to shreds, its claws leaving deep gouges in the church's stone floor. A bestial roar erupted from its throat, rattling the stained glass windows and extinguishing half the candles. Outside, soldiers shouted orders as spotlights cut through the growing darkness. 7 centuries buried alive, the creature snarled, stalking toward Tommaso with predatory grace. And now they want me to hunt Austrians, to become their holy terror in this new crusade. It lunged suddenly, seizing Tommaso by the throat and lifting him until his feet dangled above the floor. The priest made no move to resist, even as blood vessels burst in his eyes from the pressure. Kill him and be done with it, Valente said, stepping forward with her service pistol raised. Or I empty this magazine into your skull. The creature turned its milky gaze toward her. Your weapons cannot harm me, daughter of war. Perhaps not, Valente replied, but I served in Eritrea with Father Tommaso. I saw what guilt did to him after the colonial massacres. Death would be a mercy compared to his daily torment. The creature's grip loosened slightly. You know his sins? As he knows mine, she answered. We are all weapons of someone else's war. Tommaso dropped to the floor, gasping. I didn't come to recruit you, Brother Matthias, he wheezed, blood speckling his lips. I came to end this cycle. The creature circled him, thorns glistening with fresh blood that dripped onto the stones with rhythmic taps. You cannot kill what God has blessed, priest. Not with weapons, Tommaso agreed. He withdrew from his pocket, not a cross or holy water, but a simple iron key. This opens the Vatican's Archivum Secretum. I've spent months studying what they did to you. The ritual, the herbs they fed you, the prayers they chanted as your bones broke and reformed. The creature went still. To what purpose? To undo it, Tommaso said, or failing that, to tell the world. Every sin the church committed, every lie they told, every sacrifice they made to forge their divine weapon. The creature's claws flexed. Revelation! After 7 centuries. But first, Tommaso continued, you must remember who you were. The creature's laugh scraped like metal on stone. The man is dead, priest. Only the beast remains. No. Tommaso disagreed. Rising unsteadily, he removed his clerical collar. I've read your confession, written before the transformation. You were a soldier, before you were a monk. You volunteered to become the beast because you'd already seen war's horrors and believed nothing could be worse. Something flickered in the creature's face. Recognition, perhaps, or ancient memory. You were wrong. Tommaso whispered. Without warning, he stepped forward and embraced the monster, pressing his forehead against the creature's thorned brow. Blood streamed down his face as the thorns pierced his skin. The creature howled, trying to pull away, but Tommaso held firm. "I see you, Matthias of Toulouse," he said, using the creature's forgotten birth name. "Not the beast, but the soldier who became a monk, the faithful man who suffered eternal transformation." The creature's muscles convulsed violently, its form shifting between beast and human with each spasm. Its claws dug into Tommaso's shoulders, drawing deep furrows of blood. "Let me go," it growled, voice distorting between human and animal. "I forgive you," Tommaso continued, "not in the name of the church that betrayed us both, but as one broken servant to another." Valente moved closer, her pistol now holstered, and placed her hand on the creature's trembling arm. "Enough, brother," she said softly. 700 years is punishment enough." A sound escaped the creature. Not a growl, but a sob. Centuries of rage and pain breaking like a dam. Its form flickered more violently, the thorns receding momentarily to reveal the face of a young man with agonized eyes. "I remember the ritual," it whispered in a fully human voice. "The pain, my bones breaking, my skin tearing. I begged them to kill me when I realized what I had become. Instead, they used you," Tommaso said, "as they used us all." 700 years, the creature repeated, "hunting the guilty while bearing my own guilt." "It ends tonight," Tommaso promised. He pulled away, his face streaked with blood that mingled with tears. "Go, brother, into the mountains, away from this war, from Rome's reach." Valente stepped forward. "Take this," she said, offering her military-issue compass. "North leads deeper into the Alps, into Switzerland. They're neutral in this war." The creature stared at the small metal object, then carefully took it with claws that seemed less bestial than before. "The church will hunt me again." "No," Tommaso said with newfound conviction. "I will ensure they never find you, even if I must burn every record myself." The first rays of dawn filtered through the stained glass, casting colored light across the church floor. The creature moved toward the door, its gait now more human than beast, though the transformation remained incomplete. Caught between worlds. At the threshold, it turned back. "Tell your Pope," it said in a steadier voice, "that his divine weapon has remembered its humanity." Then it was gone, seeming to dissolve into the mountain mist. Valente supported Tommaso as they watched from the doorway, his wounds still bleeding freely. "Will we see it again?" she asked. "Perhaps," Tommaso replied, watching the empty path leading into the Alps, "in another war, when men again commit atrocities in God's name." He turned away, the gospel of the beast clutched in his bleeding hands. But next time, it might remember it was a man before it was a monster. In the years that followed, no more bodies were found arranged in sacred patterns on the Italian front. Father Tommaso was recalled to Rome but never arrived, disappearing with Major Valenti and several crates of documents from the Archivum Secretum. The Vatican's hunt for their missing priest was matched only by their search for what they still called, in private correspondence, the divine beast. Yet on the highest alpine passes, villagers occasionally spoke of a strange monk who walked the mountains on moonlit nights, no longer hunting, but watching, waiting, and remembering. If this tale from the War Maestro's archive left you questioning the shadows at twilight, take a moment to join our congregation of the macabre. Check your rosary beads. Make sure they aren't warm to the touch, and subscribe to uncover more forbidden histories where military precision meets supernatural horror. Hit that notification bell. You'll want to know when our next sealed Vatican file is broken open. Share this story with those who understand that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are those created with divine purpose. Remember, some ancient weapons never truly die. They merely wait for the next war to awaken them.